Are they at that table? Investigation, reduce spending. We don't really have a problem with it. To my day one fans and to the new ones, welcome to News to Me. The first time I went to the polls was 1997. Them time them I never know nothing about politics. And really and truly, me just did a vote because there was a lot of hype and me did just want to get involved in it. So I never did really to study what these politicians were saying. But one thing that stuck in my mind before the actual election was a speech I heard by Bruce Golding. That time he and Brascoli and a couple others had just broken apart from the JLP and they were in the process of forming the NDM, but that was the first time I heard about fixed election date. And from 1997 until now, I have heard the promise of fixed election date in almost every election cycle. Not almost, every election cycle. I have heard them talk about fighting corruption. And I have heard them talk about fighting crime. And I feel like with this upcoming election, I am hearing the same promises that I have heard over the last 30 years. Let's start with fixed election date. General elections are constitutionally due every 5 years, and I think there is like a 3-month or 90-day grace period. I'm not quite sure. Somebody who in the know legally can correct me, but it's not exactly 5 years. There's a grace period, right? And so that's when elections are constitutionally due, and there have been, arguments for and against, but every party, when they're in opposition, has supported this until they get in there and are supposed to actually follow through on that promise they made. The JLP has been much more consistent than the PNP on the fixed election date issue, and it seems like when Bruce Golding was in power, he actually tried to push it through. Now, among Bruce Golding's proposals was that no prime minister would serve more than 2 terms, but the bill hit a hurdle in Parliament when it was discovered that there would be need for some kind of constitutional reform before such a bill could be passed. Notwithstanding, Andrew Holness again campaigned on the issue of fixed election dates in the run-up to the 2016 elections. And despite already serving 2 whole terms, the party is still dragging its feet on the constitutional reforms needed to make it a reality. But even as far back as 2002, both former Prime Ministers P.J. Patterson and Edward Seaga argued that a fixed election date would unwisely rob the Jamaican people of the power to eject a government from office before their term run its course. So will Jamaica ever have a fixed election date? I would say that it's very unlikely in the coming years, simply because both the JLP and the PNP want to have the election date in their back pocket to use as leverage every 5 years. And then we have the issue of corruption. When the JLP is in opposition, they want to do everything to stamp out corruption. When the PNP is in opposition, they want to do everything to stamp out corruption. There have been multiple corruption scandals associated with both of the 2 major political parties since as far back as we can remember. There was the PNP's gambling scandal and the Operation Pride program and the traffic guru checks and the light bulb scandal. There's a JLP scandal and Manat, Phelps and Phillips and the Petrojam scandal, and so many others are missing even from this list. Not to mention that this 2019 article is only talking about the 2000s, and so the whole corruption period of the 90s is completely left out. With this JLP administration, they came in on a hype in 2016, vowing that we are going to be the ones to deal with corruption. And for a while, it looked like they were serious. They were the ones that pushed through the Integrity Commission Act and made it become a reality. And it seemed like for the first time, Jamaica was really serious about holding our parliamentarians accountable. Wrong. When the Integrity Commission bill was passed, Prime Minister Andrew Holness hailed it as a win for Jamaica and said it would serve as a measure of accountability for parliamentarians and public officials. In his speech to Parliament, this is what Andrew Holness said. There is no denying that whilst we have made significant strides as a politically independent country, we could have achieved much more were it not for corruption in many forms, revenue leakage due to corrupt practices, misuse of public funds, and the overall perception of pervasive corruption, all of which have served to compromise the flow of investment into our country. The government and I believe the opposition have pledged to do all in our power to rid Jamaica of the scourge of corruption and to restore public trust and goodwill in the institutions of the state. So how did we go from this to this? In fact, it didn't take long for the same administration that ushered in the Integrity Commission to then turn around and call the agency a rogue organization. So it seems like this JLP administration only wanted to give the impression that they were going to address corruption. They didn't actually want an Integrity Commission that held them accountable. What we see is that every election cycle, both of the major political parties put on a show wherein they know exactly what the issues are, so they talk about the issues. They know by now, they're seasoned politicians, so they know that these are the issues that Jamaicans want addressed. But they also know that they only have to put on the performance for a limited period of time before we get distracted and the partisanship takes over, and instead of demanding real action and accountability from our politicians, we start to turn on each other and accusing our fellow Jamaicans of being partisan. And by doing so, we let these politicians off the hook so that they don't have to actually follow through on these promises. The only thing they need to do is to recycle the promises in the next 5 years. Jamaicans know that when it comes to the Jamaica Labour Party and the People's National Party, no better herring, no better barrel. People power means that we are the ones that have to hold them accountable. And we get the chance to do so every 3 years in local elections and every 5 years in the general elections. And whether they follow through with a fixed election date or whether they actually follow through with any of the other multiples of promises that they make, we are the ones who have to stand up and use the little power that we have to make our choices and our needs known to them. We cannot continue as an electorate to let these politicians get away with making promises that they don't intend to keep.